voices and things like that. And Rush Limbaugh filled the need. It kind of touched Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, right-wing radio in itself, touched on a lot of antipathies and festering angers that, gave people license to get angry and be angry and embrace the anger. So it reinforced things that were already there. It tapped into a rather rich vein. And as a result, radio bought it because, radio is not a political entity. Radio owners aren't necessarily political for the most part. By and large, they're capitalists. They want to make money for their investors. So that's what was selling. That's what they were marketing. So
my theory is that they're more unapologetic and united in their not having a sense of needing different points of view. And I think actually now, Rachel Maddow from MSNBC and whatever that other guy's name is, there's some people now who I think are becoming, they're almost sounding like the right wing on the left, and their sort of unapologetic point of view. And I guess that's okay, but I think that just to balance things out, but I think the Rush Limbaughs of the world sort of had a much better sense of what it is that they had and who their listeners were, and they were, feeding them, and we're doing it unapologetically. I think liberals had a harder time doing that.
The bottom line is that nobody wants to hear liberal talk. Nobody wants to hear about raising taxes and about having bigger government controlling various aspects of our life. Nobody wants to hear about this country appeasing the world. Nobody wants to hear about judges making law from the bench, because liberalism is not something that resonates with people. Liberalism is something that has to be done in a controlled atmosphere. And liberals do not want to have those sorts of exchanges, because they do tend to bring into question their entire edifice, their entire ideology, and they do cast doubt in people's mind regarding their exalted and somewhat elitist opinion and position that they should be controlling these things and they should be trusted with power.
I think fundamentally, at some level, left-wing radio can tend to be pedantic and boring, and maybe I'm illustrating that point perfectly right now, but the fact remains that it's not quite as viable as. But I would point out that you look at The Daily Show, or you look at the Rachel Maddow Show on television; those shows are doing enormously well, and that has more to do with I think they started to hit on something. There's something that's it's a completely different way of presenting the news and analyzing the news, intelligently, thoughtfully, and not necessarily completely snarky and rabid, and willing to accommodate different opinions in some, but they clearly have a slant.
There's sometimes, hugely radical people on the right or left who maybe aren't major party candidates, and that's a whole other debate. Do they deserve the same amount of airtime as the major candidates? I actually don't believe that they do, but I don't think that necessarily flies in the face of the Fairness Doctrine.
It is the only venue that does question their authority, that does really question their ideas, and because liberals generally are more authoritarian in nature. They believe in and they worship government, an authority. They believe that government is an agent to change the world, to change human nature. And they don't want to have anyone questioning that. They don't want to have anyone interfering with it, and they believe that they are morally correct in censoring it, which is what they're doing, and in stopping it.
Talk radio tends to be reinforcing, like blogs tend to reinforce. You find a radio station or a program or a blog that reinforces your own opinion, and then it becomes an echo chamber. To that extent, it works. But I don't think a lot of opinions are changed, certainly not through ranting diatribes from cranky middle-aged white guys.
In the end, and this is, I think, the most important thing, fairness is good for democracy. And so when they got rid of the Fairness Doctrine, and when you only have one side pumping out their point of view, and only that point of view, I think that it isn't healthy for democracy. I think, I know there are arguments made that so many media outlets now that, people can find that information. But, the whole role of a newspaper, the whole role of a broadcast organization like us is to help curate and filter so that people are, we're helping to organize various points of views and ideas so that you're not overloaded with 10,000 bits of information that just confuses you and where you really don't have any clue in the end of what one side thinks versus what the other side thinks.
The idea of having the government in any way interfere with the right, with free speech, and I think it's interesting that it's only radio that they're talking about this sort of government control. They're not forcing newspapers or television or anyone else. I think they'll probably go after the internet next, but it's really, radio is pure speech. It is literally the old soapbox in the local town common of the days of the colonists, when you get up and you speak through a megaphone, and it's pure speech, and it should not be in any way regulated by the state. That runs against everything that this country stands for, and it certainly is something that I believe will rue the day if we start regulating speech on the air, especially, but generally, because if we regulate it on the air, it's going to have a chilling effect on people's comfort level when they even speak in their own lives and privately.
Censorship of any kind is antithetical to what we advance as a free society. So and that means on the left and on the right. But, and to be honest, most of the censorship really does come from the right, and it tends to be this kind of Christian-based thing that has more to do with of language and prurience and that and whatnot. And so as a result, we act like teenagers. We act like easily, we laugh when we talk about body parts, or we censor somebody about that. In other countries where that's not such a big deal, that doesn't happen. Open it up, open up everything, and don't restrict it. You can restrict ownership. I've got no problem with that, but restricting the messages, no, I have a big problem with that.
It was unfortunate when the Fairness Doctrine went away, because I think the fear that that many of us had about what would happen ended up happening. That news departments were banished. The unique personality of radio stations serving individual communities went away. National ownership organizations like Clear Channel came about, and I think created generic radio stations across the country, and I think it wasn't a good thing for democracy, and I don't think it was a good thing for radio either.
Based upon comments made by liberal senators such as Chuck Schumer and now Tom Harkin and Debbie Stabenow and others, they want to control talk radio. They want to make sure that talk radio does not criticize or interfere with their agenda. They believe that there is something good about that. They believe that because they have such a moral rightness in their view, which is the view of big government, they believe that people who oppose that view need to be stopped because they're standing in the way of their idea of progress. So they feel morally justified in coming in and regulating radio and stopping conservative radio.